Hi everyone, my name is Jake Smeester and I am the Content and Media Specialist for Amazon Sumerian. Today we are going to be going through a tutorial called Flying a Drone. This tutorial can be found on our documentation and tutorial site, and we are going to walk through that today step by step. We might change a couple of the values, we might not stick to it exactly, and that's kind of the cool thing with Sumerian is that we might provide some suggested values, but that doesn't mean you have to stick to it exactly. Flying a drone. This tutorial involves several different important components for Amazon Sumerian. The two major ones, well, three major ones are the state machine and the collider and rigid body components. The state machine is as we saw in another video, is it's the component that allows you to add interactions and transitions from different states and create different behaviors for entities and assets. That's the state machine. Very, very helpful and useful, and as you build a lot of scenes in Sumerian, you will be using that quite a bit. The other two are the collider and the rigid body components. The rigid body component is essentially, it attaches itself to an entity and an asset and defines that entity or asset as a solid object that will react to gravity. So when you add a rigid body to a box or a drone or a host or anything, it'll fall to the ground until it collides with something. So that is a rigid body. It essentially treats something as it applies gravitational pull to that entity. The other one is collider. Excuse me. This one's an important one because if something falls through the air, if something has a rigid body, it'll just keep falling forever until it actually hits something or collides with the ground or a platform of some kind. And so a collider component is really important to actually define things as solid objects. And so this allows things, as the name implies, that it allows entities to collide with one another and see other entities in the world as physical solid objects. As I'm sure you've noticed, if you place different entities in the Sumerian scene and you move them around, they can just kind of go past through one another. Well, rigid bodies don't allow that to happen. It will treat those entities as solid objects. So that's what we're going to be doing to build the Flying a Drone. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Let's switch to my screen. I am on my dashboard right now, and we are going to create a new scene. Here's the completed scene, the one I've already built, but we'll get to that a little bit. Obviously, that's the point of this. So we will start by creating a new scene using the default lighting scene template. If you have used templates before, they're kind of helpful. The empty template doesn't come with anything but a camera. The default lighting template comes with a camera and a sky sphere and some good looking lighting. So we were going to click on this one and we'll call it Flying a Drone Video Walkthrough. Okay, so here we go. Loads the scene. And here we are. Nothing in our scene other than a couple lights, as you see here. Directional lights and a grid and a directional, not directional, an orbital camera, orbit camera. All right, so the first thing we're going to add to our scene is a box. The box will kind of act as a platform for the drone to sit upon and collide with and land on. So we will create an entity and we will select a 3D primitive that is a box. So we'll add box, and there it is. And it's automatically selected. You'll see it is here in the entities panel. And it is selected, as you can tell. And the three transform handles or gizmos will appear here. We can grab these and move them around. As you'll notice, as we do that, the transform values or the translation values change. One thing I should note is that transform, it handles all of the different positioning and size and rotation. of an entity. And translation, I know similar words, translation is the specific location. So this is translation, so this is where is it in the scene. These values represent the rotation. Is it rotated? And again, I can click on this button here and rotate it. And this is scale, and so how big is it? Right now it is 1 by 1 by 1, so it's a cube. We're going to return. We don't want to add a rotation, so we'll return that. We'll also return it to its original position of 0, 0, 0. I'll go back to the transform gizmos. However, I do want to change the size and scale of it. So what we will do is we will unclick the uniform scale, and I believe we want to make this 10 units long along the x-axis. And then we want to keep it at 1 unit along the y-axis. And we're going to change this to 2 units along the z-axis. So it's a box. It's a little more of a platform. Okay, in the tutorial, we also changed the color just because we just don't want this plain white. We want our drone to kind of stand out. So again, select the box, hit material, and the first thing that comes is color diffuse. So we're going to select that, and you see it's kind of this grayish white. Let's select, let's just go with a darker green. Actually, you know what? No. We're at Amazon, so we are going to do something a little bit lighter. I don't know the AWS yellow offhand, but it's somewhere in here, maybe, probably, something like that. All right. So we got our yellow box. We can rotate around using our mouse, controlling our editor camera. I'm holding down the right mouse button and moving this orbit camera, our default camera, around the scene. If I want to ever zoom, so if I get zoomed out way far away and I'm going to pan over here, so I can't, and I'm trying to find my box and look at it, but I can't find it. I'm selected on it, but I can't actually see it. I'm going to hit the F key to frame it within view on the canvas. So I hit F and then it appears right there. I can zoom in on it. It's a pretty handy hotkey. All right. One thing that I did do that I may have not mentioned that's an important thing is that on the transform, you do have to unclick uniform scale to get these to be different. If uniform scale is clicked, if they're 1, 1, 1 and that's clicked, they will all increase together and decrease together. If it is clicked with different numbers, as it is now, they will all move in relativity to one another. So the box shape stays the same, but all of them move those values relative to the other. So let's see, I had this at 10, so we'll just go back to that. Okay, great. There's our box. The next thing we're going to add is the drone. And so let's import an asset up here. This will pull up our asset library. These are assets that we have built, the Sumerian team has built and provided as publicly available assets. This is something that is growing all the time and we're adding to constantly. The Cairo toaster is something we use in another video. That our 2 current hosts, which again we are adding more through as we are going through limited preview. Will increase. We'll have more hosts. So hosts can be found here: the view room, the speakers, some different furniture, the TV, lights, fixtures, tables, some sounds, and some audio files can be found here. And of course, our drone. And so we are going to click on the drone, add this to the scene. All right. Nothing happened. Why is that? It did happen, but actually only something changed over here in the Assets panel. Again, the Assets panel is one of the most important things to pay attention to. It contains everything that is in your scene. Not everything that is just on the in the canvas or viewable within the scene, but it contains everything that you have imported into the scene. So just because you import it doesn't mean you've actually added it to your canvas yet. So if we go here, we actually only have 2 packs. One is the default pack, which has our blue sky sphere, some default material, and a sky sphere. And then we have the drone, which is what we just imported. So if we expand this, you'll see that the drone has a lot of different files involved in it, a lot of different textures, a few different, what do we call these? Some various meshes, excuse me, and then a script to rotate the actual blades. And so all assets are composed of lots of different files, and lots of different assets make up one large asset, or pack, as we call it. But how do we get the drone into the scene? Well, if we click on the drone.fbx file, this is the entity asset that we want to add. You know that's an entity by the fact that it is next to this hexagon icon, and that represents all entities in our scene. So I can actually filter down to just entities by clicking this filter button for for entities, the hexagon icon. And boom, there it is, our drone entity. And so when I drag this file, it'll actually drag the entire model, the 3D model, or the entire asset. Okay. Let me go back, collapse this. All right. It is now in our scene. As you can see, the drone is in the entities panel. Once it lands into the entities panel, it is somewhere in your scene. It might be hidden, it might be hiding behind something else, but it is there somewhere. And as I just said, it might be hidden. Where is it? It is actually inside the box. And so what we need to do is drag the Y translation handle and just pull that up. And there it is. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to hit my F key to zoom in on it really quickly. And there it is, the drone. Now, I just made another last second decision that I don't like this yellow because it's a little too light. So I'm going to darken this. You know what? Let's just make it green so it stands out. Okay. See why in just a second. All right. In this tutorial, we give some specific values for where you should place, where you should actually place the drone. And I'm looking for those values now. And actually, you know what? I'm sorry. We don't provide those specifically. What we tell you to do is just to drag it up until it's sitting on top of the box. All right. So you can see the outline of this entire entity. And as I drop it down, it kind of disappears. That means it's kind of going into the box. We don't want that. So we want to just keep it above. So right there, as long as I can see everything, that means that it is outside. Okay, great. So now we have a box. Now we have our drone in the scene. All right, I'm going to go ahead and press play to see what happens. Nothing really happens other than the animation that's included in this asset starts running, which is the drone blades or propellers start spinning. That is just something that is part of the asset that is included. So there's nothing that you can change that if you want, but that just comes by default. All right, so how do we get it to move? Well, there's a few things we want to do first. Like we were talking about earlier, the collider and rigid body components. What we want to do is add rigid body components and collider components to these two assets, the box and our drone. The box, however, well, let's start with the drone. The drone we want to be able to fly, right? So we want to be able to hit a button and it'll fly up into the air, and then when you're not holding down on a button, it'll fall down to the ground. In order to do that, however, we need to make sure that it actually can land on something. So that will be the collider component. And so for this one, we will add two components, the collider and the rigid body. We will add the collider, and there you go. There it is. You see you can tell that it has a collider component because of the green, outline. That insinuates that there is an actual collider component, meaning that it sort of treats the engine will treat this drone really as a box. So if you kind of follow my mouse, nothing can kind of go inside here in between the blades. No, it'll just kind of run into the side of the green box. And so that's kind of the extent of the collider. Now you can change that by changing these half extents by going in or out. And so I'm just doing this visually. I'm gonna drag up the drone a little bit more. As you can see, the half extents are we're going down into the box. Okay. So really, what is going on here? This collider component is really not reaching the entirety of the drone. It really is just this kind of flat disc or flat. It's a really thin box at the base. But all we really needed to do is we needed to land on top of this green box. And so this will work. And so we're just going to keep it like that. Now it's up in the air right now, and that's fine because when we press play, eventually that will change. You'll see what happens in a second. All right, so that's the drone collider component. We need to add one more component, which is the rigid body component. The rigid body component will now add to the drone a gravitational pull. So when we press play, it will actually fall to the ground. So let's go ahead and press play and see what happens. It looks like nothing happens. That's because as soon as we press play, it fell to the ground. So if I reposition my camera and stop and start, well, I guess I need to stop the scene, then reposition my camera. Keep an eye on the drone and you will see what happens. We press play, then it starts falling to the ground. See there? So it's as soon as as soon as the play mode initializes, the drone starts falling through the air because it has gravitational pull on it, or a rigid body. Okay, so how do we get it to make sure that it lands on top of the collider? Well, the drone has a collider, but the box does not currently have a collider. And so the drone doesn't recognize the box as another object in which it can collide with. So we need to select the box and add a collider component to the box as well. We're going to keep the shape of it as a box because it is a box. And it will naturally fit around the actual size of this box. I can kind of increase the half extents on the x-axis. You can kind of see the green box growing there. So when you keep it at 5.5.5, it pretty much matches the size of the box itself. When you have objects like a drone that aren't a solid primitive object like a sphere or a box or anything like that, you got to be sometimes a little bit more creative with your collider components, like we did with the drone before. So you might be wondering, are we going to add a rigid body to the box? We are not going to add a rigid body to the box because we don't want the box to fall. We want the box to stand still. If we add a rigid body to the box, they both would fall and nothing would really happen. So again, we don't want to add gravitational pull to the box because we want that to stay still. So let's play the scene and see what happens. Immediately, the drone falls to the ground. Okay, so we need to change a few things, though, on this. So let's press stop. Let's click on the drone. Click the rigid body. We are going to freeze the X, Y, and Z rotations. This is so that when we actually start adding in, this is for the rigid body. This is so it doesn't just kind of start spinning off into space. And so this will kind of make sure that everything, that it doesn't, not that it spins off into space, but we don't want it to rotate at all as it is moving through the air. So we just want it to stay still. So we're going to freeze the X, Y, and Z rotations. Let's see, let's continue moving down. And let's see, that should do it. If you want to try out some different property values for the rigid body, you should do that. I would recommend it. Like the mass, for example. If you change the mass to 5, how does that change? I don't actually know the answer for this situation because I haven't done it. I'm just experimenting as well. Press play. It falls down to the air. Okay. I'm trying to see how to get it to make it so it doesn't fall as fast. So I'm going to drag it up a little bit just to experiment. Let's press play. Falls down to the air. Let's make the mass 100. No, not 4100, just 100. And let's make it 0.5. That doesn't really seem to be doing much of a difference. Got to stop and start it again. Yeah, that doesn't really make a difference. Kinematic. The kinematic, essentially, it won't be affected by other bodies in the physics system. However, other bodies will be affected by it. That's not something that's really relevant to this demonstration. Okay. I guess we'll just leave it at that. The rigid body. Collider. Friction, we don't really need to worry about because it's not actually going to be, it's colliding with the box, but it's not moving or rubbing against it. So it's not actually, there's no friction really, it's just landing and stopping. Okay, so we'll stop, we'll continue on. Let's move this down again. So now we have a drone that is falling to the box and landing on it. But how do we start to actually build in the ability to fly this thing? That is done with something called a state machine. State machine allows you to add in some interaction. And so you can press down some keys, and those keys will make the drone fly into the air, and you can control the left and the right. And again, it seems like a simple behavior to add, but it's not as simple as you would think. And so we're going to walk through how to do that. Just because adding any sort of behaviors in a 3D scene, Sumerian, any other game engines, all behaviors, just they come with a lot of different components to it. So, yeah, we're gonna walk you through that. There's just no other way around the fact that making this stuff works can be a little bit tedious. But luckily, Sumerian is actually pretty easy to use and self-explanatory. And so once you start kind of getting comfortable with how things work, you start picking things up pretty quickly. All right, so let's go back to our scene here. All right, so we need to add a state machine to the drone. This would be so we can control the drone with our keyboard. We're not going to be controlling the box. Again, that is just a stagnant landing pad for the drone. So we are going to click add, sorry, I didn't go a little too fast here. We're going to click Add Component over here in the Inspector panel. We're going to scroll down to the State Machine and add a State Machine component. If you look, no behaviors are in this component. That's because we haven't built any. If you have pre-built behaviors, you can actually drag them over here, which is something that will be important later. But right now, we're actually just going to have to start from scratch. So we're going to hit the plus button to start a new behavior. And this takes us to the state machine editor. A state machine has a graph, the state graph here, with various states in it that can be attached with different actions. And then we will create transitions between those states to create a full-on behavior. All right, so what we're first going to do is we're going to work on the vertical movement. So this behavior is going to be control the up and down motion of the drone. And so we're going to call this vertical movement. And we currently have one state in it. And we are going to name this state no movement. All right, so this is a state we want it to actually just be a stagnant. So we are going to then scroll down here. Don't have it selected. So I got to select the state. It's called no movement. Now we need to add an action. The action we're going to add here is what's called a key down action. I didn't actually make that very apparent. So if I click add action, I search for key down action. This action listens for a key press and performs a transition. All right, so we've already added it, so we'll just exit out. But that's what this does. So right now, it is currently waiting. The key that this key down press action is using is the A key. You can change it to whatever. You can use spacebar. You can use the letter 4. But we are going to use the W key. And so we will hit W, and we will then, that's all we're going to do with this state, actually. So then we're going to add another state. I need to drag over these panels a little bit so I can see things a little bit more clearly. So then I'm going to hit this plus button, which is add a new state. So then we have a new state called state 1. We are going to name this one move up. Okay, and the action that we are going to add to this is also going to be the key up action. I'm sorry. And the key that we're going to use, because what's really common, especially in games, is using the WASD keys, meaning the W, A, S, and D, WASD. Those are the common keys that we use for moving up and down. Okay, so we have two states, a node movement and a move up. And then we are going to connect these two together using transitions. And we're going to see what happens. So we're going to press play. And you can see as I press the W key, it transitions from no movement to move up. And goes back. Because as soon as I lift up, it transitions back to the no movement. So the no movement is waiting for me to press the key. As soon as I do, it transfers to the next key. As I hold it down, it is waiting for me to release it. And then as soon as I do, it goes back to the original state. But as you notice, nothing is actually happening with the drone. We see these states transitioning back and forth to one another, but right now they don't do anything because we haven't defined actual movement yet. So we're going to hit stop, and then we're going to do a couple other things here. So we need to actually define some movement. And so what we're going to do is add an action, and then we're going to search for apply. I'm just going to search for apply, and the first one that comes up is the one we want, which is apply force on rigid body. Okay, so we have this apply force on rigid body, and there's a force that can be associated. So in which direction is the force coming from? And the apply point. The only thing that we really care about is changing the force value, because this is a vertical up. We're going to be using the Y value, which is the center value. And we're going to change that to 15. So a force of 15 will be applied when we press the W key. Okay, so then let's keep that. Let's press play. I think I have something. I think I have something messed up here. I need to go check something 1 second. Hold on. Okay. I think that first of all, I have I know what I did. I added that action to the wrong state. Because no movement, we don't want actual force applied. So we're going to click add action. Let me back up. I have the move up state selected. So then I add action, apply force, change it to 15. Let's press play. No movement. It's waiting for me to press the key down. And as soon as I do, boom, it starts moving up and down. And as soon as I release it, it falls back to the box. I'm going to close out of the state machine editor just so we can see it a little bit better. Hit the W key, goes up. Release it, goes back down. I'm going to toggle the state machine back on over using this button over here. I'm going to stop it because it's great. Right now we have a couple things going on. We have the ability, the drone itself can fly, but it doesn't currently have the ability to move left or right. So what we need to do is we need to create another behavior that allows it to the drone to actually go left and right. So what we're going to do is we're going to close. I'm going to scroll up here. I'm going to go back to click my entity, my top level entity here, and it'll close out of the state machine. And as you see, I have a vertical movement behavior here. Now we need to create a horizontal movement. Now the thing is, in this vertical movement, I have a couple states that that I can kind of start using. I can build off of using by duplicating. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find. Let's see, where are my behaviors at? There it is. Okay. Clicking all different things. All right. I need to go to my assets, and I'm going to duplicate the behavior and then just kind of make some changes on that behavior instead of starting from scratch. So I'm going to click this behavior here. Actually, it takes me right to it. But I want to duplicate this. And so what I'm going to do is hit the duplicate button, and you'll see that it creates vertical movement 2. Let's click on vertical movement 2, but let's change the name to horizontal movement because it's something totally different. Horizontal movement. Okay. So to delete some of these transitions, because we're not just going to be using one key. So in the vertical movement, we are only using the W key. In the horizontal movement, we're going to be using the A and D keys to make it go left and right. So to delete a transition, just click on the transition. You sometimes got to be real specific. Sometimes if you click on the arrowhead, it becomes a little easier. That'll delete the transition. And one thing I forgot to do is I didn't actually add this to the drone yet. So again, all we have here is vertical movement. I created a horizontal movement, but it's not currently applied to the drone. So I'm going to drag the horizontal. I'm going to drop it in this drop input. And there we go. We have vertical movement, a horizontal movement. But we need to actually complete the horizontal movement. So I'm going to click the edit button, which is the little pencil icon. And we are going to make some changes on here. All right, so let's see. What are we going to do here? We want to keep the no movement as it is for now. We're going to select the move up state, and we're going to call this move left. And I'm going to make it so it's a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to put this over to the left there. And the key that we're going to actually use is the A key. So we're going to, with the state selected, we're going to change the key up action, which we still want to use the key up action. That's why we duplicated this behavior, so we can reuse some of this. But we don't want to apply force vertically. We want to apply force in one direction. So we are going to use the x-axis, and we're going to add a force of -4. Okay? Now, what we need to do is we want to create a move right action or state. But to do that, instead of starting again, we're going to duplicate states. As you notice, you might notice as you go through some of these videos that duplicating states and duplicating assets makes it a lot easier instead of starting from scratch. So in this one, we're going to call move right. For this one, we're not going to use the A key. We're going to use, oops, I didn't mean to do backspace. We're going to use the D key. All right, so on key up, the drone will move right using the A key. On key D up, it'll move right. I may have said that wrong. To move left, it'll use the on key up action will move it left. To go right, the on key D up action will move it right. Okay. One thing I need to change though is -4. we want it to go in the opposite direction as the left movement does, so we got to actually delete that. Oh, I forgot to delete this. I want to make this 0. I don't want to apply any vertical movement. So on both of these, we're going to delete that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Now we need to do a couple of things. We're going to select the no movement. And we're going to add another action. And we're going to add the key down action. We already have one key down action, but we need 2 key down actions. And this is so, we'll explain this in a second. We're going to make one of these D and the other one A. Now what we need to do is add transitions between all these things. And so we need to take the on key down action and make it go to the on key up action. And then I take that back. And then I need to return this state to the no movement state. On the on key down, or on the key, A needs to go, let me say this in a better way. The D key goes to the D key action, the A key goes to the A key action. And then select the action and draw it back. Okay, so let me explain what's going on here. We have a no movement state. So when you press play, it's also selected as it's set as the initial state. So when you press play, the no movement is the state in which the drone will be in. No movement. Okay? So, but what it is waiting for, the no movement is waiting for a key down action. So it's waiting for something to happen, either an A or a D key. It's waiting and just kind of waiting and listening. Not listening, that's not the right word. It's waiting for one of those 2 actions to happen. As soon as the A key is pressed, it moves it to this state, the move left state. And if you go to this one, you'll notice that there's a negative force, a force of -4 on the x-axis, moving the drone to the left. Okay, so, and as long as you have the A key pressed, it will just be waiting for you to release it. And so as soon as you release it or let it go up, it'll return back to the no movement state. And again, the no movement state will then be waiting again for you to press down on either the A or the D. If you press D, it'll transition over to this state, which has a force of +4 on the x-axis, and it will move that drone in that direction. And it is waiting for you to release the D key. As soon as you do release the D key, this transition will send it back to the no movement. And again, waiting for another key press action. So if we press play, let's see what happens here. As soon as I'm pressing the A and I'm holding down on A and it goes to move left. Then I release it and it goes back to no movement. I press D and it goes to move right. It's waiting for me to release it. As soon as I do, it goes back to no movement. Now, why is it not moving? Well, it's because it's not up in the air yet. As you remember, you do have 2 different movements, a vertical movement and a horizontal movement. And so what we got to do is press play. I can press the W and it goes up. And I press the D key and it goes right. I press the A key and it goes left. Now I'm stuck under the box. There we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. Oh, I'm going to lose it. There's our drone. It's kind of hard to see, I'm sure, and such a small screen. It's a pretty big world, though, so it can actually go see if I can land it back on the box. Yeah, I think I did. Cool. So this drone essentially has 2 different behaviors, a vertical and a horizontal. One behavior controls up, and the other behavior controls left and right. And again, it's not like one entity can have one behavior at a time. It can interact with both behaviors at the same time. Now, one last thing I want to do is I would like to create, instead of this box, I want to create something else. I'm going to hide this box for the time being, and I'm going to create an entity, and I'm going to create I didn't really show you what that is, a disk, all right? A disk is just kind of well, it's a disk. As you can see, the disk is in the center. I'm going to press F to zoom in on it. Oops, I got to press stop play mode. And there's my disk. It's kind of sideways. You can only see it from one side, though. So what I need to do, and it's also going up and down, I want this to act as a ground, essentially. And so to do that, I'm going to change the X translation value to -90. Sorry, maybe 90. Nope. Where's my disk? I don't. Oh, I'm sorry. I know what I did. Not the translation. The rotation. That was my mistake. Changed the rotation to 90. So there we go. I just moved it way out of the scene by changing it to 90. But I also want to change the size of this. I want to make this really, really large. So with the uniform scale selected, I'm going to make it 1000. Now, as you can see, it goes pretty far out. Actually, I did 100. I want to do 1000. Good. All right, so now we have a very large ground instead of just a single box to land on. And so what I also want to do is I want to add not a rigid body, because I don't want the disk to fall. I'm going to add a collider component. So I'm going to hit collider. The shape, though, I want to be an infinite plane, because I want it just to kind of go forever. I don't want it to be a box. I want it to be an infinite plane. There's really nothing else I need to do with the infinite plane. I'm going to actually delete the box, because even though I can't see the box because I hit it, it'll still be there. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select the drone, hit F to zoom in on it, and then I'm going to press play. And this, again, it falls down to the disk. And then I can hit the W key, zoom out, hit the W key and the D and A keys to make it go left and right. So now we got, it's not really a game necessarily, but you can see how you can use the state machine to make things interactive and change within a scene. Pretty cool stuff. All right, that is the state machine, collider components, rigid body components. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this. You're not limited to just the drone. You can apply this to any entity, any asset. There's a lot of interactions you can do. So if you have any questions, ask in the chat window here on Twitch. You can also send you can DM me on Twitter at Jake Smeester. Find me on Slack, AWS-Jake. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can reach out to any of us on Slack, which is amazonsumerian.slack.com. Join that group and again, make feature requests, ask us questions, let us know how we can help you and how we can assist you in better using Amazon Sumerian. Thanks again, and continue watching the next tutorials. Thanks.